Unveiling the unexpected, how a curvy woman transformed her life after a billionaire stepped in a small Midwestern diner bursting with laughter and the aromas of hearty food, Sarah adjusted her apron, feeling the familiar sting of expectations weigh down her shoulders. She was a curvy woman fighting against a world that frequently underestimated her size, her dreams, her intellect. But none of that mattered when she looked at her spirited 10-year-old daughter, Lily, who danced through life with infectious joy. Sarah worked tirelessly to provide for her, fueled by her late grandmother's relentless spirit that had inspired so much of her own tenacity. Yet as she served scrambled eggs and coffee to the same patrons night after night, Sarah couldn't shake off the gnawing feeling that life had more to offer than this relentless grind. One Friday evening, amidst the clatter of dishes, Daniel walked in. A striking contrast to the diner's cozy chaos, he brought with him an air of sophistication mixed with an undeniable charm. As he ordered a coffee, their eyes met. In that flicker of a moment, Sarah felt something shift within her. It wasn't just admiration for his striking looks, it was an awakening, like the first whisper of spring after a long winter. He seemed to see her beyond her waitress uniform, beyond the people-pleasing smile she wore. For the first time, she experienced a strangely intoxicating blend of hope and fear. This was dangerous, she thought. What if becoming close to him amplified the whispers doubting her worth? Before she could catch herself, the connection deepened. Daniel became her mentor, spurring her to pull out the sketches of vibrant fabric designs she had tucked away since her youth. With every encouraging word exchanged, her self-doubt gnawed at her relentlessly. Who did she think she was? Did she truly believe she could step outside of her role as a waitress and mother into the world of high fashion? The excitement was bittersweet. She longed to embrace the security of her daily routine, yet she knew that pursuing her passion came with risks not just to herself, but to Lily. If she failed, what kind of example would she be setting? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the upcoming local fashion show approached, excitement shifted to dread. Rumors about her connection with Daniel sparked jealousy among the regulars who once found comfort in her presence. The community's scorn was palpable, blurring the lines of support and betrayal. They no longer saw her as one of them. Each whisper served as a reminder. Who did she think she was? Agony twisted in her stomach as she battled those feelings. The weight of every judgment pressed heavily, a noose tightening around her ambitions. The moment the email confirmed her spot at the fashion show, exhilaration morphed into fear. Could she really stand in front of them and unveil her designs? Then came the blow that shook her resolve to its core. The morning before the show, she discovered her designs tarnished, as if someone had ripped apart her hopes before her eyes. Panic surged, a tidal wave of despair crashing against her heart. The gnawing realization that jealousy could dismantle her dreams filled her with dread. Would she allow the prejudice she feared to drown her chance for a brighter future? Clenching her fists, Sarah stood at the brink, heart racing, ready to confront the past and uncertain future. Would she rise strong from the ashes, or would she falter under the judgments that loomed overhead? The tension tightened around her, and the overall fate of her aspirations waited in the wings, untouched yet dangerously close. The sun peeked through Sarah's kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of her designs laid still and lifeless on the dining table. Each torn piece of fabric mirrored the turmoil in her heart. She had envisioned brightness, vibrance, each swatch symbolizing hope and resilience. Now, that hope lay in shreds, like the whispers that taunted her. Her fingers trembled as she assessed the damage. Realization struck hard. Her dream was under assault not just by an envious hand, but by her own self-doubt. Hours ticked by like leaden weights. The reality of the fashion show loomed closer, each moment echoing her failure to protect what she cherished. She hated that these doubts crept in, but more so, she despised the glimmer of revelation they brought. It was time to confront the very fears that had shackled her, not merely the threats from outside. She needed to claim back her power, no matter how desperate the situation seemed. With a deep breath, Sarah gathered the remnants of her sketches, her trembling hands shaking off the peeling despair. She studied them, reminding herself of the bold colors, the flowing lines, the very essence of her creativity poured into each stroke. "I am not just a waitress," she whispered to herself. "I am an artist." The weight of those words grew lighter in her mind, igniting a flicker of defiance against the negativity that surrounded her. Daniel's mentorship had sparked a flicker of ambition in her. She recalled their conversations, his belief that creativity flourished in adversity, that true artists took the painful experiences they encountered and transformed them into something beautiful. Closing her eyes, she could almost feel his belief wrap around her, filling the gaps gnarled by fear. Her resolve crystallized, and she sprung into action. Utilizing the limited materials she still had, Sarah rummaged through her closet and found fabric remnants, scraps of the past and remnants of her grandmother's sewing kit. Each piece whispered stories of perseverance. Armed with a needle and thread, she began to construct something anew. This wasn't merely a revival of her designs, it was a reclamation of her identity. As she stitched, the rhythm of her hands working revealed an underlying strength she hadn't fully recognized. Each movement felt empowering, erasing the chasms of doubt that had taken root. It was a raw, rudimentary practice, but it was also cathartic. With every knot tightly secured, Sarah felt a knot of anxiety loosen slightly within her heart. Hours transformed into a blur of color and creativity, a mental kaleidoscope morphing her anxiety into passion with every humming flourish. The door's jingle echoed, jolting her from her passionate trance. It was Lily, her bright spirit entering the room with that familiar gleam of innocent joy. "Mom! What are you making?" Lily asked, eyes wide with curiosity. For the first time in days, Sarah smiled genuinely. "A secret project," she replied, the weight of her decision pressing against her chest, but this time buoyed by purpose. Lily giggled and twirled, infectiously motivated by her mother's update. "Can I help?" "Yes, I need all the stars I can get," Sarah said, as an idea sparked in that exchange. Sarah realized that this journey wasn't just about her, it was about how she modeled resilience to her daughter. This moment would weave into the fabric of Lily's memory, teaching her to embrace challenges instead of succumbing to fear. The clock ticked steadily towards the fashion show. Confidence pulsed through Sarah as she prepared a sketched outline of concepts across unraveled napkins and old receipts. She wasn't just going to participate, she wanted to impress the very hearts that doubted her. The time had come to face not only the show but the judgments, jealousy, and most importantly, the fear embedded within her. Sarah wasn't merely standing at an intersection of dreams, she was ready to embark on a path toward her authentic self, but as she caught sight of the jagged remnants of her earlier work piled on the floor, the latent fear whispering in the back of her mind called her to reconsider. Would her past insecurities seep into her presenting of these new designs, or could she truly rise above them? The acclaimed moment neared, all she could do now was prepare for the unexpected, poised to transform what had been a wreckage into a statement of triumph. The afternoon passed in a flurry of creativity, leaving Sarah exhilarated yet vulnerable. The remnants of doubt lingered at the edges of her newfound determination, whispering nagging thoughts. Would the pieces she created withstand scrutiny? As she meticulously worked alongside Lily, laughter echoing through the kitchen, shadows of anxiety skittered through her mind. "Mom, can I pick the colors?" Lily asked, her small fingers dancing over the fabric swatches. Sarah caught herself smiling, realizing for the first time how intertwined their journeys were. Lily's light-hearted enthusiasm infused Sarah with a renewed sense of responsibility, not just to herself, but to show her daughter the beauty of resilience. They became a team, stitching together not only fabric but a bond of strength. With each carefully chosen color, Sarah felt more connected to her vision. The vibrant hues she envisioned in her initial design seemed to whir and whirl in her mind, waiting to be translated into a statement of identity. As they layered fabrics, she noticed how her daughter's choices often mirrored her own dreams, and together, they infused a spirit of hope into every stitch. By nightfall, a new garment began to emerge bold and daring, embodying the very essence of Sarah's creativity. She felt the fabric under her fingers, simultaneously fragile and resilient, much like herself. But with every snip of the scissors, a chill of dread prickled her spine. The fashion show was just days away, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the event would expose her deepest insecurities. Why was she still faltering, even in this newfound spirit? What if they don't like it? She voiced, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a relentless drum. She stared at her creation, beautiful yet vulnerable. This was more than just fabric, it represented her journey, embodying her struggles and triumphs. Then we make something even better. Lily declared, her faith unwavering. You can't let them take away your magic. Magic. Sarah contemplated the word, recalling her earlier conversations with Daniel about harnessing adversity for artistic growth. Perhaps this was the test, the opportunity to showcase not just her designs, but the metamorphosis of her spirit. If only she could harness that magic he believed in. Deep down, a flicker of hope ignited once more like a stubborn ember defying the winds of doubt. As the evening darkened, her fingers danced over the fabric, almost creating a rhythm to her thoughts. Each thread connected not just pieces of cloth but the discordant parts of her identity, the waitress, the artist, the mother, each striving to coexist in harmony. That realization set forth a decision. She would embrace her fears rather than deny them, integrating them into her narrative. Wasn't she setting an example for Lily? Could fear be recalibrated into fuel? As dawn broke the next day, Sarah began to sketch again, pouring her anxieties openly onto the paper. She had to face the insecurities embedded in every brushstroke, every fabric swatch. What if she could create a design that not only defied fashion norms but told an intricate story of personal triumph? That thought coursed through her, igniting her focus, yet, beneath this newfound resolve, an unsettling thought gnawed at her. Could she genuinely present herself in front of a crowd, sharing the deepest parts of her journey, the struggles, the painful reminders of what took place, and the hope woven through it all? As she prepared for the next steps, Sarah confronted the possibility that she could indeed stumble again, but wouldn't it be worth it to share her authentic self? In that crucial moment of reflection, the distinction between victory and vulnerability crystallized before her. She had to confront her audience, but first, she must confront the mirror reflecting not just her designs, but her entire journey. With the show approaching, the coming days no longer felt like a daunting countdown. Instead, they transformed into an exhilarating challenge, a test of her resolve and perhaps, an unfurling of her deeper self. A loud knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. As she opened it, her heart lurched. It was Daniel. He held a clipboard, a glimmer of encouragement in his eyes. I need to talk to you. We need to discuss your presentation. The significance of his arrival stirred both hope and fear. Was the moment finally upon her to face the truth of her capabilities? Would she be ready for the revelations that awaited her on the other side? Sarah's breath hitched as she invited Daniel inside, the clipboard a tangible reminder of the impending reality awaiting her. His presence was both a comfort and a quiet challenge. As they settled at the kitchen table, the remnants of fabric and sketches surrounded them like soft sentinels, each whispering of dreams unfulfilled. I've been reviewing your designs, he began, glancing down at the clipboard filled with notes she had yet to see. They're extraordinary. But I want to know more about your story. What drives you to create? His direct gaze caught her off guard, and an involuntary rush of vulnerability washed over her. She had spent her life deflecting personal inquiries, masking her fears and failures behind layers of creativity. But Daniel's open curiosity demanded authenticity. I just want to express everything I've been through, she admitted, her voice wavering slightly. The weight of her past pressed against her chest, but she recognized this as an opportunity to share the deeper layers of her experience. Every piece I create tells a story, the hard moments, the moments of joy, the failures and comebacks. It's all there. Daniel nodded, his fingers tapping lightly against the clipboard. That's exactly what we need to showcase. Make it personal. You're still treating this as a fashion show. But what if we turn it into a narrative? Let your audience feel who you are through your designs. His suggestion sent her mind racing. Could she truly blend storytelling and design in a way that not only captivated an audience but also unveiled her most authentic self? Flickers of fear and excitement danced within her. Yet, the thought of standing on that stage, bearing her soul through her creations, struck both terror and thrill through her. But what if they don't connect? She countered, a frown creasing her brow. What if my story just falls flat? There is no falling flat when authenticity is involved. Vulnerability breeds connection, he replied. Your fears, they are as much a part of the story as your triumphs. Embrace them, and allow your designs to carry that weight. Sarah inhaled deeply, absorbing his words. Perhaps embracing vulnerability was the key. She had spent too long shying away from the very aspects of herself that made her real. Now was a chance to turn that anxiety into an empowering revelation. What if I told my story through the colors and fabrics? She proposed, her confidence growing. Each garment could reflect a part of my journey, struggles through darkness, bursts of joy, moments of rebirth. It could be a progression. Exactly, Daniel encouraged, leaning forward. This is about presenting a curated collection of who you are. Telling a story of resilience, using your journey through fashion. Give your audience something they can feel in their hearts. His excitement fueled her fire. A dedicated resolve ignited within, replacing doubt with a steadfast purpose. Armed with fresh conviction, she realized that she could redefine her narrative through her art, making it relive her triumphs while honoring the pain that once held her back. Let us put together a timeline, she said, a determined glint in her eyes. Each piece can embody a chapter, a moment. I can enhance the presentation to reflect that narrative. As she jotted down ideas, the blur of anxieties transformed into focused ambition. Days filled with creations now felt like an expedition into self-discovery. Yet, a nagging question loomed: could she truly present this deep, intertwined narrative to an audience willing to understand it? You have to be ready to step out of your comfort zone, Daniel said, his voice steady. This is your chance to own it. As they outlined a plan, Sarah's excitement was tempered by a wave of uncertainty. The fragility of her truth shimmered beneath her surface, the prospect of sharing it both exhilarated and terrified her. Keenly aware of the moments she had ahead, she strived to confront them with fierce honesty. What awaited her at the fashion show was more than just a presentation, it was her journey laid bare, the ultimate unveiling of the woman she had fought hard to become. But lurking beneath those aspirations was one last painful thought: what if her story didn't resonate? What if the crowd watched in silence, unmoved? For all the strength she summoned, this worry lingered like an ominous cloud. Are you ready? Daniel's question hung in the air, the weight of the moment pressing against her. The answer to that would define everything. As she looked at him, her heart pounded, signaling the storm of emotions brewing inside her. No, she wasn't entirely ready yet. But maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to embrace this truth no matter the outcome. And with that, a renewed sense of purpose surged within her. The fearful unknown began to transform into an exhilarating possibility. But the path ahead remained steep and full of shadows. What awaited her just beyond the horizon? Would she rise to meet the challenge, or would she falter before the threshold of her greatest opportunity? The days that followed Daniel's visit unfolded in a whirlwind of creativity and self-reflection for Sarah. Each morning, the sunlight streamed through her window, igniting an ember of determination deep within her. In her studio, once a cacophony of chaos, order began to blossom. Each thread and fabric was no longer just material, they transformed into a narrative, a window into her past. Inspired by Daniel's challenge, she crafted a timeline. But instead of mapping out just designs, she delved deeper. She recalled moments that had shaped her, the sting of childhood mockery, the warmth of familial love, the setbacks of her early career, and finally, the triumphs that taught her resilience. Page by page, her heart and soul emerged in vivid colors, interwoven into patterns that spoke of struggle and victory, yet, with each piece she created, doubt crept uninvited. What if her audience saw her history as too messy or too raw? In a world obsessed with perfection, would they embrace the imperfections that made her real? The fear of vulnerability pressed on her, casting a shadow over her newfound focus point one late evening, while adding the final touches to a dress that embodied her hardest moments, she hesitated. The fabric, a deep navy adorned with a flurry of golden threads, mirrored the melancholy of her past. Was she truly ready to wear her heart? Why are you holding back? Her reflection seemed to chastise her. It's your story. Own it. The encounter with her own reflection proved to be a catalyst. Sarah recognized that to present her designs authentically, she must first embrace her flaws, her insecurities, the very narrative that had once been too painful to share. Daniel's voice echoed in her mind. Vulnerability breeds connection. It was time to anchor her fears, turning them into fabric swatches and stitching them into garments. Transitioning from fear to acceptance, she began experimenting with her storytelling approach. She integrated spoken narratives into her designs, choosing distinct shapes and textures that symbolized different aspects of her journey. The shapes undulated across the fabric, echoing her evolution, sharp silhouettes to represent struggle, flowing cuts to convey freedom, and rich hues symbolizing rebirth. Over the next 2 weeks, each day built upon the last. She dedicated time to meditate, reflecting on the aspects of her past she once wished to hide. Moments of empowerment emerged, like the first time she walked confidently down a runway or stood up to a critic who dismissed her talents. Simultaneously, her bond with Daniel deepened. Their conversations shifted from design logistics to profound discussions about identity and art. Sharing her journey with him became a safe harbor, a means to untangle her feelings and doubts. But with every passing day came the approaching date of the show, and with it, the stakes climbed higher. She could feel the weight of her story settling on her shoulders. Would it resonate? Would it elicit empathy, or would they simply judge her for her past? The fear of the unknown loomed like a relentless wave. Determined not to let fear dictate her choices, Sarah decided to embrace the potential silence of the crowd. If nothing else, she owed it to herself to be authentic. The journey ahead would be her testament not merely to her creativity but to her tenacity, strength, and the ability to stand proud in her truth. As she stepped back to survey her creations, a flicker of a smile broke through her anxiety. This show had become more than a platform for fashion, it was a pivotal moment for personal growth. And she was ready to step into the light, even if the darkness still lingered at the edges of her mind. But the night before the show, an unsettling realization crept in. Had she truly poured her heart into these pieces? Or had she left parts of herself unwritten, unfulfilled? As she stared into the mirror, her confidence wavered. The reflection reminded her that the hardest stories to tell were often the most impactful, yet she feared the vulnerability might drown her resolve. Would she muster the courage to unveil not just her designs but the vulnerability that fueled them? Or would she retreat once more into the shadows of doubt? Answering these questions could very well lead her to the realization she sought. As Sarah lay in bed, the weight of the upcoming presentation settled around her like a thick fog. Tomorrow would not merely be a show, it would be the day she faced her fears. But was she ready to embrace the world with her unfiltered truth? Time would reveal all. The morning sun broke through the curtains, spilling golden light across the floor, yet the warmth did little to melt the icy grip of anxiety that clutched Sarah's heart. Today was not just any day, it marked the culmination of her journey through doubt, creativity, and self-discovery. As she stood before the mirror, scrutinizing every detail of her appearance, an internal dialogue raged. The deep navy of the dress contrasted vividly with her door, resilient yet vulnerable, the perfect representation of her transformation. But was it enough? Would the audience see the depth, the grit, behind the fabric, or would they dismiss it as mere cloth draped over a body? In that moment, a revelation ignited within her. What if she infused more of herself into the presentation? The designs were not merely creations, they were reflections of her struggles, her joy, her evolution. Each stitch carried a part of her narrative. She recalled the early days when she turned away from her work, hiding her creations out of fear of judgment. Her mind pivoted to Daniel, whose unwavering support had given her wings. She could almost hear his words echoing, urging her to forge ahead, to show the world that her story was not a burden but a powerful testament to resilience. The vulnerability she feared could transform into strength. A newfound determination surged within her. Sarah gathered each piece of her collection, placing them one by one on a mannequin. Touching the fabric, she whispered softly to each design, reaffirming their purpose. They were more than clothes, they were the embodiment of her past traversed with honesty, stitched with the essence of her life's fabric. With each pass through her studio, her pace quickened. She began to see elements within the garments that could elevate her story, the delicate embroidery that symbolized moments of joy intertwined with hardship, the contrasting textures reflecting her authentic self. Could she enhance her designs to evoke emotions that would resonate? As she worked, her phone buzzed. It was Daniel, checking in. Thoughts for today? His message was simple yet potent. He believed in her potential to transcend fear. A warmth spread through her as she typed back her swirling ideas, thoughts spiraling into a cohesive narrative for her collection. In that exchange, Sarah felt a weight lift. She was not going to face this alone. The collaborative spirit she had built with Daniel, flourishing from an initial mentorship to a genuine partnership, provided the moral support she needed. Her artistic vision was no longer isolated, it echoed in the exchanges they shared. Each detail she crafted sparked new confidence. She began envisioning the interactivity of her presentation. What if she told her story as the models walked down the runway? Each step could narrate her journey, the brave strides echoing moments of defeat, the graceful turns representing moments of self-acceptance. Time ticked away relentlessly, yet as she focused on her work, the anticipation shifted from fear to excitement. With every passing hour, she wrought pieces of herself into her designs, filtering through remembrance while embracing the unfolding of possibilities. But as the evening drew nearer, a different kind of doubt emerged. Would the audience resonate with her story? Would they understand the depth, the layers behind her creations? The familiar gnawing crept back in, whispering that exposure bred vulnerability and vulnerability could lead to rejection. As she buttoned the final piece, a statement jacket brimming with artistic detail, a trickle of uncertainty lingered in her mind. Would they cherish her vulnerability or remain indifferent? The stakes were undeniably high. This show wasn't just about fashion, it was about her heart laid bare. And yet, amidst the uncertainty, she breathed in the familiar scent of hope she had cultivated over the past weeks. With the cars lined up outside, signaling it was time for her to step into the light, Sarah faced her reflection once more. This was her moment to shine. She would unveil her creations, yes, but more importantly, she would unleash her truth. As the models prepared backstage, she felt the weight of her story hitching a ride with them. But within that excitement was a reel of anxious energy. What if her confidence crumbled on stage? The lights dimmed, and the thrum of anticipation reverberated through the room as Sarah took a deep breath, her heart racing in time with the countdown. Could she muster the strength to stand in the face of judgment, revealing all that she had poured into her art? Or would the crowd's response shatter her resolve? The moment of truth loomed closer, and with it, her destiny awaited. As the lights began to dance across the runway, Sarah stepped into the wings, her heart pounding against her ribcage. The rhythmic beat of music pulsed through the air, synchronizing with her anxiety and igniting a fire deep within her. This was at the moment she had been preparing for. But as she stood there, every self-doubt she had buried over the months resurfaced, threatening to drown her resolve. Would those in the audience appreciate the depth of her journey, the labor of love woven into every fabric? The first model took her place at the end of the runway, the deep navy of Sarah's design gliding elegantly down the pathway. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as each step echoed the heartbeat of her vision. Every twirl of the fabric, every graceful turn, embodied parts of her triumphs, her struggles, her vulnerabilities. With each passing model, she could see bits of her own narrative portrayed on the pristine stage, yet, as the first applause erupted, a flicker of panic gnawed at her. What if they didn't connect with her story? Each burst of clapping felt like a test, an evaluation of her worth as an artist. Was her vulnerability enough to resonate with strangers, or would her openness expose her to judgment? For a moment, she considered retreating, concealing her art behind a wall of silence, but then, Daniel's words flashed in her mind, "Your story is your strength." She steadied her breath and focused on the models who were now embodying her spirit. The embodiment of each fabric story was not just a display, it was an invitation to embrace her truth. Could it be possible that her story, threaded into their movements, would lead others to see beyond the surface? The second model strolled forward wearing a design adorned with delicate embroidery, representing Sarah's moments of joy intertwined with hardship. As applause drowned out her internal chaos, she sensed a quiet change. The audience was engaging. They were leaning in, captivated by these embodiments of honesty. With each design unveiled, Sarah felt the weight of her insecurities lifting. These garments were delivering messages of resilience, echoing her voice through the fabric. Potentially, her artistic expression could inspire others to face their own vulnerabilities, challenging them to find beauty in the scars that life had left behind. Yet, as the final model graced the stage in the striking statement jacket, Sarah's breath quickened again. This was the heart of her collection, and she could practically feel the audience's eyes scrutinizing the intricate details. Would they see the layers of her experiences stitched onto the fabric, or would they judge it as just another design? Panic coursed through her veins as the soft, haunting music faded away, replaced by the eager murmurs of the audience. Their anticipation created an electric atmosphere, but it also stoked her insecurities. When the models formed a line at the end of the runway, the applause crescendoed, but she remained frozen in uncertainty. Was this the moment she had longed for, or had she left herself exposed to vulnerability? Then, amidst the applause, she caught a glimpse of Daniel in the crowd, encouraging her with an affirming nod, silently urging her to step forward. She had invited everyone to witness her story, but had she forgotten the most important step, sharing it herself? The reality of the situation hit her like a wave. She needed to confront her fears head-on, not just through the designs but by finding her voice. A desire sparked inside her. She was ready to embrace this moment fully. As the applause continued, she stepped from the shadows, her heart racing not just with fear, but with an invigorating purpose. The time had come for her to face not just the audience, but the cornerstone of her own journey, accepting her truth, owning her narrative. With every step to the microphone, she felt a grounded certainty. This was her time to impart her story, to reveal how her growth intertwined with what she created. But as she opened her mouth to speak, a sudden sensation of doubt gripped her again. Could she find the words that encapsulated her journey, or would the silence linger too long? The room was buzzing with potential, but within her lay the imminent challenge of vulnerability that could either ignite her speech or silence her forever. The moment Sarah stepped to the microphone, the weight of her insecurities felt heavier than ever. The auditorium silenced, and eyes fixated on her. Panic clawed at her throat, nearly rendering her speechless. Yet, she could hear Daniel's encouragement still echoing in her mind, pushing her forward despite the rising tide of doubt. It was now or never. Taking a deep breath, she began, "Thank you for being here tonight. This collection isn't just about what you see, it's about what you feel." Each word felt both empowering and terrifying. She could feel the energy in the room shift, the audience leaning in, their anticipation palpable. As she spoke, fragments of her journey unfurled, her childhood filled with onlookers' judgment and the suffocating grasp of societal expectations. She shared the laughter and tears that accompanied her transformation, detailing the nights spent sketching designs while grappling with her self-image. Those moments resonated deeper than she had expected. The collective silence shifting into murmurs of understanding reminded her that vulnerability could become a bridge, not a barrier. And tonight, she continued, the tone of her voice shifting to one of defiance, "I want to challenge the notion of beauty. My designs draw from every curve, every scar, and every moment of self-doubt I have experienced." With each statement, the fiery confidence she struggled to embrace painted her delivered words with color. As she relived her battles, she saw reflections of shared experiences flicker in the audience. People who had faced their own versions of feeling too large, too small, or too different suddenly seemed to stir. It clicked in her mind just as she had dressed her models in cloth that told her story, she was finally weaving her truth into theirs. "I stand before you as proof," she declared, her resolve rocketing, "that our stories can empower us. We must own our narratives, proud of the tapestry that they create." The clapping broke out like thunder, compelled by the authenticity radiating from her stance. Breathing deeply, Sarah reveled in the fleeting feeling of liberation. Yet, back behind her mind lay the flickering shadows, fear still tightly coiled around her heart. Who was she really if she laid all her insecurities bare? This excitement of acceptance was intoxicating, but daunting as well. What if she faltered in moments of doubt, exposing vulnerabilities again, bustling toward potential rejection? Julia, her former mentor, had pushed her into the world of fashion design, sharp-tongued but insightful. "You must learn the difference between validation and acknowledgement," Julia would say. Though Sarah now felt acknowledged, she couldn't help but wonder if she was simply seeking validation from this audience or validating herself. As she wrapped up her speech, Sarah caught a glimpse of Daniel again, witnessing the pride and warmth in his expression. In that fraction of a second, she understood something vital. The journey of acceptance wasn't merely arming yourself with confidence, but rather learning to flirt with the uncertainties, the moments that would make her appreciate the achievements and growth. The final applause thundered throughout the room, and Sarah's heart soared. In the aftermath, she felt exhilarated yet uncertain. This night became pivotal, a crucible for her transformation, and yet a multitude of questions stirred within her. What next steps would follow this exposure? Would she sink back into complacency or rise to become a trailblazer in her own right? And as she descended from the stage, exhilarated but apprehensive, a thought settled in her gut: a new venture awaited her. How would she truly step into her identity, and not just as a designer, but as a figure of strength? The answer felt just beyond her reach, ready to unravel into a new chapter where brave decisions would ignite her path. The bright lights of the auditorium faded as Sarah stepped off the stage, the applause still echoing in her ears. She was blissfully aware of the multitude of eyes that had just witnessed her transformation, yet a deeper noise churned within her, a blend of excitement and trepidation. Her heart thrummed wildly, the adrenaline still pulsing through her veins, yet nagging echoes of doubt began to surface. With each step away from the spotlight, the exhilaration of the moment shrank, revealing the more muted colors of reality. What now? The thrill of exposing her vulnerabilities had carved an empowering space within her, but it was counterbalanced by uncertainty. Was she truly equipped to navigate the realm she had just dared to enter? The weight of her aspirations pressed against her chest like a storm cloud, filled with potential rain. Outside the building, the cool night air settled around her as she inhaled deeply, hoping to clear her mind. She caught a glimpse of herself in a reflective surface, a woman who had bared her soul and donned her confidence like armor, but was it really hers? The question hung there, blurring her moment of triumph. Flashes of self-doubt kicked back in, images of her childhood fears gripped her heart, those moments where she believed herself not enough, the times she submerged her true self to fit an expectation. Daniel broke her reverie as he sidled up beside her, handing her a tall glass of water. "You were incredible out there," he said, his admiration palpable. She met his gaze, an honest smile breaking through the fog. There was sincerity in his eyes, but a sudden impulse made her step back, a visceral fear igniting. Could she trust it? Could she trust herself? "Thank you," she murmured, but in her mind, the thrill of the applause morphed into a weighty obligation. What if she failed to uphold this emerging identity? What if the very next step she took drifted her back to complacency, back to the shadows where self-doubt thrived? A loose gathering began to take form. Former friends and colleagues surrounded Sarah, offering their congratulations, subtly grasping for the buzz she had just created with her speech. However, rather than basking in the attention, she felt increasingly detached, as if observing from a distance. She was there, but part of her lingered in that looming question: how would she translate this moment into lasting change? As the group chatted excitedly about the collection and the positive reactions, Sarah sifted through her thoughts. What did she truly want to achieve? This was not just about fashion but establishing a voice. Not just a designer, a role model. But the enormity of it twisted in her gut. Could she seek out opportunities that aligned with both passion and purpose without losing herself in the fray? The tension of decision-making flooded her. Seeking collaboration. Would she flaunt her designs in a way that got her noticed, but at what cost to authenticity? Sarah felt a storm brewing inside her, the fear of potential rejection battling against the hope of creating something meaningful. Then she spotted Julia across the room, her silhouette betraying a hint of impatience. It was time for her former mentor to impart inevitable wisdom. As Sarah geared up to approach her, another flood of nerves threatened to deter her once again. Yet, she knew she couldn't retreat into her shell, not now. She needed to understand her next move clearly. As Julia's sharp gaze met hers, Sarah's resolve doubled. The clash of her ambitions and fears stood at the precipice of transformation. With a steadiness she didn't fully feel, she stepped forward to confront her mentor, the woman who embodied both guidance and challenge. Would Julia fuel the fires of her ambitions or extinguish them with harsh realities? The answers felt urgent and tantalizingly close as she took that breath. It was a leap, and in that moment, Sarah knew she had to chase clarity. The stakes were higher, her journey awaited not just acceptance but a fierce validation of her identity as she engaged with the woman who could help shape her development further. As Sarah stepped forward, her pulse quickened. She was no longer just a waitress, she had embraced her identity as a designer, a storyteller, and, most importantly, a woman unafraid to show her vulnerabilities. She had publicly unveiled her truth and her journey, but now came the next crucial step in her evolution. Julia, she greeted her former mentor, mustering the courage she had cultivated over the last few weeks. Julia's expression was inscrutable, a mix of pride and critique, a shade of her typical candor. "Can we talk?" "Of course," Julia responded, her tone piercing yet inviting. "Congratulations on the show. You were surprisingly vulnerable out there." Surprisingly vulnerable. The phrase hung in the air like a puzzle piece she had yet to grasp. "I wanted to show that creativity stems from struggle, not perfection," Sarah conveyed, conviction threading through her words. "Good," Julia nodded, glancing back at the gathering crowd. "The fashion world thrives on authenticity, but it is competitive. Do you think you're ready to not just participate but lead? Ready to lead?" The question echoed within like a bell chiming at the dawn of a new opportunity. "I know I want to create meaningful connections with my designs," she said, the depth of her intention crystallizing in her mind. The clarity that surged forward felt liberating. "Then you must define what leading means to you. Are you willing to embrace the pressure that comes with this journey?" "It won't be easy," Julia warned, yet her tone softened. "I've faced pressure before. I've hidden from my fears, but now I choose to face them," Sarah articulated passionately, each word a declaration of her newfound identity. Julia raised an eyebrow, perhaps she was surprised by Sarah's resolve, but her eyes glazed over with a mixture of challenge and opportunity. "Then let me assist you in leveraging this momentum." With that, an agreement was formed, a pathway illuminated, the spark ignited to transform aspirations into tangible achievements. The rest of the evening unfolded as a blur. Conversations flowed with newfound resolve, suggestions for collaborations, proposals for branding, and concepts for future collections danced between them. Sarah engaged and contributed confidently, her ideas ringing with authenticity, illuminating her journey while directly addressing her audience's shared struggles. Weeks turned into months, and Sarah poured her heart into her new designs, keen to innovate and portray the multidimensional narratives that shaped her experiences. The culmination of resilience, creativity, and the vibrant connection she fostered with her daughter became the heartbeat behind every collection. Finally, at her next unveiling, the audience was not merely attendees, they were a collective of individuals who had experienced shades of Sarah's journey. With her vibrant designs, each garment showcased not only aesthetic value but also the intertwined stories of triumph and struggle, offering hope and encouragement woven through the fabric. As she stood backstage this time, Sarah felt the familiar rush of nerves, but layered atop it was a solid confidence. The applause she received echoing through her heart only intensified her clarity. She was meant to lead. When it was time for her to speak, she took a breath and addressed the crowd directly. This is my collection, inspired by each of us who have dared to embrace our authentic selves. We all carry stories, let us honor them. As she concluded, her heart soared not just from the applause but from the realization that she had transformed. Sarah had conquered her fears. She had proven to herself that stepping into her truth allowed others to feel empowered in theirs. In that moment, she truly recognized who she had become, a designer who created not for the sake of judgment but for the celebration of resilience. She had claimed her place in the fashion world, embraced her identity, and most importantly, solidified a legacy of vulnerability, authentic connection, and powerful storytelling. Through her journey, she had achieved more than launching a collection. She had found a voice echoing through fabric, a command over self-doubt, and a thriving identity intertwined with her role as an artist, mother, and leader. Each of these roles now danced harmoniously within her, waiting to inspire others who felt unseen in their struggles. The night closed with genuine validation, where applause morphed into shouts of support not just for her work, but for the shared experience of overcoming. It was a culmination of growth, a triumphant chapter in her life that cemented her position, and a stirring promise that Sarah was only just beginning her journey. She embraced that moment, resonating with the collective energy surrounding her, no longer defined by past limitations but uplifted by future possibilities. This was not merely an end, but the dawn of an illuminating bright future, and for you, the audience, an invitation stands. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure more inspiring narratives come to life. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Did you predict Sarah's transformation? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for stories that resonate deeply. Don't wait even one more second to share.